Well, good evening all. Welcome to the last of our winter webinars. Thank you, those of you who have stuck with us all the way through every fortnight for the last 6 or 8 weeks. But we're on the last one this evening before you get busy or towards your lambing prep. But it's last but not least. So we've got two great guests tonight. In the form of Vic Ballantyne, who we've known for many, many a year, and some of you do as well, I'm sure, and our own Janet Roden. So we've got a great roster of two people that are very passionate about what they do and the industry. So we're looking forward to it. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. By all means, please press that and actually type your questions into that as we go along. And we will endeavour to pick them up as we go through the evening. So some of them we'll be able to answer maybe directly with you by typing, but the majority we will hold back and we will do them at the end of each session. So we'll make sure we get around to you all within all of that really. But hopefully you don't have to worry about people seeing you. Nobody can see you. You can have your tea, you can chill, and that's the beauty of this. The session is being recorded, so it does mean that those that haven't managed it tonight, and we've got quite a lot of people that are booked onto this, nearly 150, 160 people. So some people will be getting those recordings tomorrow, but you will also get it so that if there's anything you miss, then you'll get a second shot at it, no problem at all. So without further ado, and me wittering on, we'll go over. I think Vic is going to start us off. She's sitting there in a clover field, as you can see, in the cold. And we're very lucky to have Vic with us tonight. Just completed a Nuffield Scholarship and going around spreading the gospel. But we've known Vic and Jason for many a year, both as customers and friends, working with us up in Fern. Yeah, welcome, Vic. We'll let you crack on with it. You are muted, Vic, I think. There you go, you're on. And if you share the screen, we'll see if it's coming in.
Perfect. Right, I will first of all share screen. Don't know if I've ever done this before, so might just have to bear with me a bit. There we go. Share. There we go. Wait, is that working? Yep.
It is, yeah. If you go on to the actual presentation, yep, we're up.
We're good. Okay, cool. Thanks, Dewi, for having me. Said I'm Vic Ballantyne, and we're at Clynelish Farm in Brora, in Sutherland, and farm with my husband Jason. And his little saying is "fab from forage." That clover behind me is not what's out there at the moment, though. I'll show you. So where are we? Just for I love a map. We are about an hour and a half north of Inverness. So I'm sure you're thinking that's not a Sutherland accent. It's not, no. I came here in 2006. I actually came to do an indoor lambing when I was backpacking, and that was the last indoor lambing we did. I said if I was staying that we were never doing that again. So yeah, we're right up the top. So you know, lovely long summers and some pretty dark wet winters. Though not this year, actually, it's been pretty dry. So yeah, we so farm with Jason here. His dad was a first generation farmer. He and Jane, my mother-in-law, got the tenancy here in 1982, and it was a pretty run-down farm when they came here. We've been really lucky with them. They've been excellent at kind of allowing us to crack on, and Murdo was very progressive himself. So I guess how did I end up on this screen tonight? So I think it would have been around 2010. We were involved in the SAC, Scottish Rural or Scottish Agricultural College local business improvement group, and then we were asked to be a climate change focus farm, which was the Farming for a Better Climate program. And then we were very much involved in the QMS grazing groups, which were run by Michael Blanche and Emily Grant, and anyone who was involved in those will know how successful they were. I think they were a real kind of game changer for kind of pasture management and grazing in Scotland particularly. And then we were a monitor farm from 2017 to 2020, and then I went on to do a Nuffield Scholarship in 2022. So yeah, we've kind of done lots of stuff. We've been involved in lots of things. I was looking back at my records, and I think we first bought Innovis rams in 2014, actually, and that was just because we like the principle of what they do. We don't sell any breeding stock. We're a completely commercial store producing enterprise. So I'm not getting anything from Innovis for being here tonight. I'm here just because we like what they do, and I'm happy to support them in that. So our farm is Clynelish Farm. We actually have a distillery right bang in the middle of it, Clynelish Distillery, which is one of the main whiskies that goes into the Johnnie Walker blend. So that is bang in the middle of the farm. We are tenants of Diageo, who own that. So it's about 125 hectares or 300 acres. About 100 of those are pretty good pasture. This was quite an old photo, actually, that I took with a drone. Probably overgrazing at that point, actually, if I look at that now. We've got dry stone walls or dikes, as we call them up here, as all our field boundaries, and then we've subdivided with semi-permanent fencing everywhere. Currently, we have about 90 cows, and I'm slightly embarrassed to say I think it's even less than 450 ewes. I'm not quite sure how we got that low. Anyway, we've got 240 ewe lambs coming in, so that should even that up a bit, and about 135 yearling cattle here at the moment as well. And then we contract a farm up the road with 200 ewes, but we pretty much run it just along as part of this farm. So all those sheep will be lambed here, and at the moment all those hogs are in with our hogs and things. So it helps kind of just spread our fixed costs and give us a little bit more scale. But I think ideally we should have about 700 to 750 ewes. At the moment we're sitting just under 650, so we'll get that back up. And we're in a crofting parish, so we've got a lot of very small producers around us, so we do manage to take a fair bit of grazing as well, and currently only have about 80 sheep on the farm. Actually, we've got sheep on 5 different holdings, so that's kind of how we roll here. And I guess our story is that when I came here and said I wasn't doing an indoor lambing again, we just stopped feeding sheep and went outdoor lambing in 2007. And not many people were doing that. And we didn't really have the support or the knowledge. And I think back on it now, we were pretty naive, really. But anyway, we've had lots of ups and downs. We had over 1,000 ewes here lambing in 2018, which was far too many. The cows have ranged from 60 to 110. We've tried pretty much everything. We've done fodder beets and neeps, and we've overgrazed and we've undergrazed and we've subdivided and we've used boluses and liquids and all sorts. I think we were always making progress, but then sometimes we'd probably try and build numbers and keep stuff we shouldn't have kept and take a step back. So, we were okay. We were probably better than average, but not amazing. And still had a few problems with worms and coccidia and things. And then throughout all those other kind of groups we're involved in, I applied for a Nuffield Farming Scholarship. And that was very much on the back of weaning calves in 2019. And we were trying to get our cow weights down, and we'd weighed the cows and they're about 40 kilos heavier than they'd been the year before. And I was really disappointed because we were trying to get those weights down. And then I was looking at the cows and I was like, you know what? They are not actually bigger. They're just fatter this year because 2019 was a really great grass growing year. Anyway, so that was fine. And I didn't think much of it. And then because we were doing monitor farm, keeping records of all the feed we fed and that kind of stuff. And they ate about 20% less food that winter. And that was like, for me, just an absolute light bulb. And it was kind of at the same time that, lockdown happened, and started listening, got my kind of podcast addiction, and started listening to, the head shepherd, amongst other things. And there was a lady called Dr. Sarah Bloomer, who has sadly passed away since, but she said these 4 words, and it was that fat animals eat less. And that just suddenly made so much sense to me. And so and it was very much around this idea that, if we can put condition on stock in the summer, when because of how far north we are, we grow like serious grass during that summer period because we have such long days. And we don't really suffer from drought and things either. So, we have this very extreme pasture growth curve. And so this was really appealing to me. And the name of my proposed scholarship was Too Fat, the impact of selecting for body condition in maternal livestock in areas with extreme seasonal variability. And what I should have called it was Fat Females, What Opportunities, because it would have been a lot easier to say. But I mean, I think we all know body condition is important. That is not new. They've known that for decades. We've got all these recommendations in place. But I don't think I'd ever heard much about kind of actively selecting for it. We knew we had to manage it, but there wasn't really a lot about actively, selecting for it, and the kind of genetic merit of it. So, so I kind of set off on my scholarship, and I was lucky enough to speak to people like Janet, who you'll be hearing from later, and some amazing researchers and geneticists, and academics, and like this, a Nuffield scholarship is not an academic paper. It is far from that. Like, it is very much mine, particularly like my target audience is commercial farmers. So whilst I did spend a lot of time speaking to those guys and getting kind of understanding the science behind it, mostly I visited farms all around the world. And sorry, there are some numbers on there which are more, I guess, for the when you go back and look at the recording perhaps. But I think the kind of key one is that it takes 5 times more energy to lay down fat than muscle. And you think, well, that's maybe not great use of energy. But that is nearly 7 times the amount of available energy then later on. And it doesn't cost anything to maintain fat. So it requires very little. And so I think that's kind of one of the really key kind of numbers that came up. And also that approximately 70% of dry matter in a sheep or beef system is consumed by the breeding females. And I think that's why, the maternal efficiency of our females is one of our really big production drivers and therefore profitability drivers. So I was really lucky. I got to go to Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Iceland, and across the UK. Unfortunately, my trip to South America fell through, but that's okay. I kind of can manage that. And I think probably the thing that really stood out was this quote by Tom Bull at Lampro in New South Wales. And he said, feeding stud stock for condition score is a bit like putting ladders on an army obstacle course. It's a sure way to make sure most succeed, but does little to work out who the best performers are. And, I think anyone who's bought rams and bulls in the UK particularly, will be well aware of that, we're not really putting enough environmental or nutritional pressure on those bulls and rams. And so we don't really see who can succeed under pressure. So that was something that was, I think, kind of sums up how there are opportunities, I suppose, to improve our ram and bull selections. So yeah, I was really lucky. I got to travel around the world and meet lots of amazing people. And I guess subsequently, if anyone is thinking of doing a Nuffield scholarship, I highly recommend it, and happy to speak to anyone if they want any information. So I guess I've got a 10,000 word report and a 3-minute video and all sorts of other stuff, but I think the main message that came through from me after speaking to everyone was that BCS is about 25% heritable, and I think all the kind of geneticists, I think, kind of roughly agreed on that. And so therefore it is worth selecting for. So Janet will talk about this more because she's the geneticist. That's not like super, super heritable, but it's heritable enough to be worthwhile. And I think the kind of most important thing about body condition score is the improved health and fertility. And like, they're just such big drivers of productivity and profit. And they just also make life easier. And I think we kind of underestimate how much easier life is when we've got, healthy sheep. And then I've also got that BCS is muscle and fat, and I think it's important to remember those two things as well. It's not just a fat score, it's also about the muscle that we feel on the backs when we are doing body condition scoring. And I'm well aware I'm probably preaching to the converted here, because if you've bothered to log on tonight, you're probably a little bit along this journey yourself anyway. And the other kind of real benefit from having animals that are genetically have a propensity to hold body condition better is that you can increase stocking rates, because they just deal with a bit more pressure. So then I guess my message to farmers is, choose the breeder. Number one, go to a breeder who and see their system and know that they run a system that is similar, or as similar as can be in a pedigree setup, to the commercial system that you want to run, because it's just absolutely no use taking, and we all know this, we've all done it, taking pampered animals out of a pampered environment and putting it into a commercial environment. They just do not perform. And more to the point, their daughters won't perform. So then we're just setting ourselves up for failure. Pedigree stock just must be put under some nutritional and environmental pressure, and to never chase a single trait. And that includes BCS. I mean, my argument would be, if you're going to choose any single trait, BCS is a pretty good one to choose. But obviously, never ever chase a single trait. And I think the Australian Merino is a pretty good example of how you can mess up all your other important traits if you chase one thing. And I think since probably doing it, the thing that's really come to, I guess the thing that, if you said what sums it up, is that animals with a higher BCS they're just more robust and resilient, and that just makes for better sheep systems. And I think you almost can't overestimate just how much easier that makes life, and how much better your productivity is when you've got robust and resilient animals. So yeah, that was my Nuffield. And then I guess in terms of what we're doing now, this is a picture I like, because it was the ewes that were in for having their vaccines, their Heptovac, last March, I suppose. And I think there was about 300 ewes in this group, and I think one had a sore foot, if that was it, maybe. And they'd all just come off some pretty kind of rough grazing. Hadn't had anything special, and they were just looking really, really good. And that for me was just that kind of reward that we are getting there with the sheep. We're now we're getting higher scans to 175% up from 155, 60. So that's a huge increase in productivity for us. Last year we had a 92% survival rate from a 170% scan, which we're pretty happy with. We're not intervening very much. We don't worm sheep anymore. I'll worm the triplets and maybe some Lena Gimmer twins, but yeah, that's about it. So most of our ewes haven't been wormed for 3 or 4 years now. We don't bolus anything anymore. We don't use licks. They just get the Heptovac vaccine, and that is about it. And I think that is a real reflection that the sheep are just becoming so much more robust and resilient, and they've got these better immune systems. So for us, we're making more money. We're not losing animals, and I kind of hate saying this before lambing, but we didn't lose a single ewe through lambing last year. I didn't treat a single ewe for calcium. It's just, everything just felt quite easy. I'm sure it'll come unstuck again at some point. So we're making more money. We're pretty chilled. We're pretty happy with the system. We're able to invest in some environmental projects. So I was planning hedging last week. And I think just generally we cope better with any challenges, and I think having these higher BCS animals, one of the things we do, obviously we don't feed, and we haven't, or don't hard feed, we haven't done that for years. We also don't feed silage, so everything is just on grass all winter, and that's some pretty ropey grass at times, but they seem to manage it. And triplets last year. We kept about, it wasn't many, it was about 20 sets of triplets running. And at 10 to 12 weeks, they weaned 28 kilos, having not had anything other than grass. So it just shows what you can do. So yeah, that is pretty much where we are now. And once again, I guess I come back to this message that for us now that BCS is absolutely at the heart of what we do. We brought about 6 ewes home after scanning that we just weren't that happy with, and they've all got a cull notch now. So, they just won't be here next year. So this was some of our low input strategies. This was actually from a different presentation, but I think the main thing for low input strategies is actually that this is my favorite place that I like to sit in the garden, having a beer on a sunny day. And so this is very much about having stock that we don't have to worry about all the time. I don't know if I can get rid of that. The other really important bit of kit that we have is notching pliers, or as my husband likes to call them, buenos noches. We use them pretty liberally on stock, less so now because we're getting to a point where we don't need to use them so much. So yeah, that is our high bit of technology, and once again, like, probably not that good at a lot of things. Like, we don't do anything extraordinary at all. We don't have lots of fancy kit. We're not really very good at fencing. We tend to get fencing contractors to do our work, do that kind of work. And I think the thing that we are good at, we're good at decision making. And I think for us, we do spend that time sitting around tables and planning and making sure we do the right thing at the right time. And I think, we're not bad with livestock. We probably have a good feel for livestock, but, we're not great at machinery, not great at like cropping or any of that stuff. But we're making it work. We're a small farm, but we're turning a pretty good profit for a small farm. And so I think it just shows that it can be done. So that is all I have to say. I don't know. I don't have a clock in front of me, so I'm not sure. So yeah, thank you for having me. This is one of my other favourite pictures, looking out over the farm from above.
Thank you, Vic. And a very nice picture it is as well, looking down. I think you made everybody feel quite sick now if they're coming up to lambing and they've got problems, because you made it sound a bit too easy. So. But
yeah, I should. Yeah, I mean, it is I hate saying it because I know, and we don't lamb until 18th of April, and we start calving the same day. So we just like whole lot kicks off at the same time, and the two of us just kind of manage.
Yeah, and
the last 2 years have felt like we're only in after 8 o'clock twice last year. I don't go out till like 6:37. Yeah, I mean, bad weather is our biggest problem, but if the weather's okay, actually, yeah, it's okay.
And when did you get the last sort of bad weather storm coming through at lambing? Has it been a few years?
Because we're the end of the year, yeah.
Okay.
End of April rather. And we always make sure we've got try and make sure there's plenty of grass, and that seems to have a big impact. 2015 was horrific. I'm still scarred. It was awful, and I'm aware that was 10 years ago, and we're probably due another one. But I think we're in a better place now. We deal with it better. So yeah.
With that resilience, and we're very fortunate. We've got quite a few customers out there, or people we work with, that have adopted a very similar approach, where they've built that resilience into their flock, into their farming system. And it's quite difficult for some people to imagine, isn't it, that you can run 650 ewes, which you're doing now, and probably increase back up to 800 or 900, and not spend every hour of every day with them, because lots of people do that, don't they, still?
Yeah, we just are not. I mean, I've been sick the last few days. I've been in bed, and luckily it's a quiet time of year, so I can be in bed. And we employ the same thing with our cows as well. Everything's very low input. And I think one of the other not arguments, one of the things people think, if you're low input, that you're low output. And I would argue we're not high output, but we're medium at least. We're weaning 160. Well, our target is to wean 160%, and 95% of the calves. And we don't buy fertilizer anymore either. So those three, fuel, feed, and fert just have no impact on us anymore. We're absolutely, they can do what they want. They don't affect us. So yeah, we just spend less time doing stuff. I don't know. And then we're like, we better go to the gym, which is maybe, I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
we'd be better off doing so. But actually, you can go out into a field and just really enjoy standing and watching and observing stock, which I really, really like doing
yeah,
because you're not having to rush around and do heaps of other stuff.
yeah. Well, I think it's a good example of where regen, as it's so often called these days, is done in a practical way, in a commercial way with you, where you've reached the sweet spot of the farm, or you're nearly there, aren't you? Where your
Yeah.
input costs have reduced, but your output is still respectable.
Yeah, and we'd be looking to still increase that output. Yeah, we should have 750 ewes. I think maybe not more than that. We're not a very big farm, and if we could get more acres nearby, we could easily just have another 400 or 500, and it wouldn't actually be that much.
But I suppose the question is why would you, Vic, if you're making a living from what you're doing now? It's fine, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Well, this is one of, I guess, and Jason's kind of getting closer to retirement as well. So he's certainly eyeing off easier days. And I do bed and breakfast as well. I should have said we have a big old farmhouse. So I've got 4 bedrooms. I can take 10 people, which I try not to. Yeah, and so I mean which is great because it means I'm on farm all the time. I don't have to have another off farm job. But yeah, it is quite full on, and I'm doing less of that actually because the farm is able to support us better than it
Yeah.
was maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, I've got just a couple of questions to ask you before we move on to Janet. I think Lindsay has asked, the ewes keeping good condition score at times on ropey grass. Is that simply because you've selected for body condition score, genetic selection? Have you done within flock selection to cull some sheep out, if or not?
Yeah. So anything that we have to bring home at scanning time, because we pull off all the triplets at scanning and they come home and go onto grass at home because that's where the best grass is, and they just get rotated around. And anything that's a bit lean will go in with them, and they get cull marked. So yeah, they just get culled. And so, but there was only 5 of them this year. So, and then same again at the end of kind of October when we're sorting through before sorting them into their tupping groups. Anything that hasn't put condition on again, we just won't put that to a tup. There's just no point. Flushing skinny sheep, I think it's probably one of the reasons there's a lot of metabolic issues in ewes here around lambing is, that these kind of not sheep get pulled off a hill or pulled out of somewhere, flushed on some really good grass, conceive to twins, but actually don't have that condition to carry those twins through that winter. And I'm sure it's why we have so many issues with calcium and twinil and, because as I said, we didn't even have that in any of our triplets last year, and they don't get anything. They just get grass as well. So yeah, it has been a selection process. We've probably still got some we don't really like, but they just go to a B mob. So they just go to a terminal and just make sure we're not keeping anything from them.
Yeah. And are you able to just walk us through your management groups and your year from tupping through to weaning, I suppose? Do you split the ewes off into their triplets and twins, or do you run them as one, or how do
No,
you prep
yeah.
for tupping? Do you actually flush or not?
Well, we try and do this kind of golden 20 days. The Gimmers this year were away on a bit of grazing, and we do pay for grazing, but so that's not cost free. But compared with putting out nuts or even silage, it's a no-brainer, and we just go and see them once a week, so it's not a lot of labor either. We're not going out every day with bags. So yeah, we tup the Gimmers separately, and they've been going to Primera for the last 5 years, and we found that works really well. And then the B mob they're in a bit up the road. They went to Suffolk's, and then we have to run the two holdings, so the contract farm and our own farm separately as well. So they're in two separate groups. So we certainly did a few years ago just tup 600 ewes all in one group, all to Suffolks, and that worked okay. But I think that old truism that a sheep's worst enemy is another sheep, and the thing about where we take grazing is they've got plenty of scope, so it's not especially great grazing, but they've got that scope. Though and one of those lots of ewes scanned at 188%. That's in 21 days as well, I should say. So we're on a 3-week tupping, and cows are 7 weeks for bulling. So we very much run the cattle on the same kind of system. So they just get tupped for 3 weeks. You go and pull the tups in, and they are all on a rotation, so they are all getting a fresh-ish bite all the time. And really, by the time the grass is really deteriorated, which is kind of end of January, that's when they can lose that body condition a bit, and that's okay. I think I know Trevor Cook's a real believer actually in that they should lose that body condition in that kind of second trimester. I'm sure he said it kind of makes them more metabolically stable. But yeah, so they just get tupped, and then we bring everything home probably 2 weeks before lambing. I think they'll have to come home earlier this year, but that'll be all right. We've had so far fairly mild February, March, so we might have enough. We'll just have to have enough grass, but having enough grass at home is the really important thing. So all the twins, with all the subdivision, the fields are about 3 hectares each. So it's kind of anywhere between 40 and 50 twins per 3 hectare block. The singles, we just run them all as a oneer because we don't want them having too much. And then once they've kind of lambed, they'll get moved off onto some better quality grass. But the singles are on a kind of billiard table for the first week or so. They don't see a lot of feed. But the twins and the triplets will give them as much as we can. And they just get left. And it's very much like one of the reasons I don't really go out and see them before 7 o'clock is, so I get up at 6:30 and I go and check anything in the shed, any pet lambs or whatever. And I kind of go out to the ewes, and they don't really want to see me. Like they're all curled up together in their pairs. So I lamb all the twins and Jason does the singles and the cows. And they don't really want to see you. They are quite happy as they are. So we just leave them alone. And then after about a week or so, we'll just go in. And I think last year we had 90% lambed in 2 weeks. So, all that work is really within that first 10 days. Yeah. So, we'll go in and just take out anything that hasn't lambed, and then we can start lamb marking. So start doing that. And just mark in those small groups. And we'll just set up the wrapper in one of the kind of central fields and bring all the lambs into them. And that means you're not walking lambs, twin lambs up roads, which is just the most tedious thing in the world. They're just usually going through one gateway to get to the wrapper. So that works pretty well. And we've got a docking chute as well. So that's another thing I just wouldn't be without. And then once they're all marked, and a few days after that and everyone's happy and fine, we'll start bunching them up. So we ended up with 270 twins in one lot last year, and it was actually too many. I think 220 is probably as many as we need to have. And then we just start a leader follower rotation. So the sheep are at the front, and it's every 2 days they move. We don't want to move twins more than every 2 days because they actually take a wee while to mother up again, and the first few moves are a bit stressful. So every 2 days, and then the cows come in behind them and tidy up cows and calves. So we just have kind of one side of the farm rotating with triplets, singles, and then cows, and the other side of the farm with twins and cows. And that goes on until kind of late July, I suppose. And then the bull, then we've got the bulls sorted, so the bulls go out. And then wean kind of late July, 10, 12 weeks. And for the last few years, we haven't had to worm up before weaning either, worm lambs. So the only thing the lambs are getting is a heptovac as well. and they're obviously shearing, they come in for that. So yeah, we don't, yeah.
Rick, I've got a heap of questions that are coming in, so I'll
All
try
right,
and
okay,
rush
sorry,
through
I'm babbling on.
quickly. No, you're answering some as we go, to be fair. So we'll just pick up the bits. Sam's asked what breeds of sheep does Vic have? I think you've already mentioned that you use Primera and some ewes, but I suppose the maternal element of the flock.
Yeah, so it was a Cheviot flock many moons ago, and my husband loved breeding Cheviot rams, and I could think of nothing worse. Not because I have anything against Cheviots, I wasn't into that at all. And so then we had some Clins as well, and they were fine. Actually, they did all right. And then we bought the Aberfields in 2014, and we probably used them up until 2020, I suppose. So the whole flock would have been at least half Aberfield. And then once everything was kind of half Aberfield, then we bought some Highlanders. So now we've got the kind of Highlander going onto those, and we've also got some Romneys because we run the two flocks or the two holdings. We kind of use them to cross over. So what are our Romney cross skimmers now will end up with a Highlander on them, and the Highlander crosses will get a Romney over those.
I think it would be right to say that the way you source those genetics, the Romneys, you're buying those from Sean, so up in Orkney, so you're going with the same principle of selecting sheep that have had some pressure put on them before you get them.
Yeah, and we've known Sean for a while, and they're coming from Orkney, so they're actually coming from north of us, which not that many rams do. And I know he lambs them outside. I know he's hard on selection. He's a busy guy. He's got other jobs as well. So
yeah,
but he he doesn't have the same EBVs, and I love an EBV. But his system is similar enough, and his selection is hard enough that we're happy with what he produces. But I do like an EBV as well. And I know people, maybe more traditional people think EBVs are a waste of time, and I think that you're never choosing anything just on an EBV. It's always choose your breeder, choose the rams you like, and then make sure their EBVs match up with what you want to achieve.
Yeah,
I think it's that what do you want to achieve thing, and if you want to have easy outdoor lambing, going and choosing something with a really high birth weight EBV is just not probably going to get you to where you want to be. So it is a bit complicated. And then the B flock gets Suffolks. And everyone loves buying a Suffolk. Suffolk lambs are really easy to sell. That said, when we wean, and this is, I don't know, maybe I've gone a bit soft living over here for 19 years. I do like to wean the lambs and let them recover from weaning before they're sold, whereas I know most lambs get weaned and onto a truck. I just think the stress of being run around a ring and just that stress. Yeah, so we wean, and actually there's a guy down the borders who buys most of our lambs for the last few years, so we just load up a truckload for him, and it's all done on trust, and we'll just send him some pictures and some weights and numbers and all that kind of thing, and I think that seems to be working well for him, and it's working well for us. So the lambs, leave here at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. They arrive down there at 2. They're straight off the lorry and into a field. So I quite like that arrangement. It's not because I have anything against smarts. I just, when lambs are pretty susceptible to quite a lot of stuff.
So that answers the question. We've got another question, Vic, about what percentage of lambs do you sell store fats? So I think you're covering in on that.
Yeah, we don't. We used to keep the big ones and sell them and fatten them, but actually, it's really hard to get a lorry here. We've ended up waiting for ages and holding on to stock longer than we wanted to, and all the rest of it. So once again, it just suits us at that time of year just to punt, as many stock off farm as we can. And also, already then our growing season is just starting to slow up a bit. So,
and how do you get to the value of the lambs? Obviously, there's give and take between years with people, but you've got an existing relationship. He knows what the lambs will do, I suppose.
Yeah. So we wait for the first sales and just see what's what, and then we just kind of send him the numbers of lambs that have come in at whatever weight, and we just negotiate over the phone. He's very easy to work with. He pays us the next day as well, so knowing that's coming in straight away, you don't mind taking not that we take less, but I suppose like for us, that really big high price isn't necessarily what we're chasing. You always think, oh, I could have put them through the ring and got a couple of pound more, and yeah, probably could have. But if you hit the ring on a bad day, you soon know about it as well. So I kind of like that reassurance that when they leave here, we know what they're getting. And actually, he used to pay less for the maternal wethers, the Highlanders and the Romneys, but actually last year, I think he said he was happy to pay just even a tiny bit less than the Suffolks, but it wasn't a lot. And that's because he'd had them the year before and they'd performed and finished really well for him. So because that was always one of our things as well, is selling kind of not selling maternal woolly-headed sheep through a ring. Some people can be a bit funny about that. But actually, I think any lamb going through any ring at the moment, you're probably going to be okay.
Just moving on to the ewe flock, we've got a few questions in terms of what age do you cull your ewes, and do you have any dirty back ends in your lambs? And on a similar note then as well on replacements, Clive's asking, when you're making selection on your British condition score, do you do that in your replacements? Do you actually put that into the criteria with keeping your replacements? So what age do you cull your ewes? Do you make any assessment on replacements coming in based on condition score? And then do you have dirty back ends in your lambs, Vic? So
yeah, okay. So culling ewes 6 mostly. They've got to make it to 6, which in our system, if they look at us the wrong way, they might end up with notching lines. So, like we have irredeemable things that they get culled for throughout their life. And then we have a warning notch system. So anything we have to handle or turn over and it annoys us, it gets a front notch on the front of its ear. And then if we ever see that sheep again, it's just a cull notch. And so anything with a front notch goes to a terminal sire straight away the next year anyway. So yeah, 5 or 6, kind of, I think we kept 6-year-old. We probably need to keep some 6-year-olds to get our numbers up this year. If they're in good nick and their teeth are good and their udders are fine, we're pretty hard on udders. We cull, we go through all the ewes the day or within days of weaning and udder and mouth everything then. And anything with an udder that's not even, they just get sold straight away. So, and I think that's another thing. We don't really get mastitis anymore, and we don't get blind udders, and we don't get like I would have sucked some lambs last year, but like maybe 2 or 3. Like compared with years ago, we'd be underused trying to bloody get lambs to suck and all the rest of it, which was just awful. I hate doing that. So yeah, we cull ewes at 6. Yeah, if they've made it to 6 and their teeth have to be good because they're not getting, they've got to find grass. So
and on your replacements coming in, Vic, do you put any criteria of any time of the year? Would you make a call? Is it good enough to come in based on its ability to thrive condition or not?
Yeah, so all the hogs are away at the moment. We've not really seen them for a while. So they've got to be okay when they go off. So, they need to be good at the end of the year. And good at weaning. So we make that decision at weaning and then again in kind of October. And then probably at shearing, we'll do a cut on anything that we're not happy with. And that will just be anything that's too bare or not carrying enough nick or, maybe a bit lame or something. We'll get rid of those. And dirty bums. So, last few years we've gone all the way through to weaning without dirty bums. Of course we get some dirty bums, but not many. And I thought I'd absolutely nailed it, and I was so proud of myself. And then I was looking at them about a week after weaning, and we'd wormed them the week before weaning, and we couldn't put them on the field we wanted to, and we put them back on a field we shouldn't have put them on. And I was like, oh, some of those lambs have got dirty bums. And 2 days later, hundreds of them had dirty bums. So we had to get them in and do a mass worm. So that was really frustrating because I thought we'd nailed it and we hadn't. But so that post-weaning management, I think we need to get a bit better at just in those few weeks before they go down, because he will obviously worm them when they arrive at
Sure.
his place. I know I drove past our hogs the other week. They're on kind of near the main road at the moment, and they've just hit some really, really lush grass down where they are, and they're definitely a bit pooey. So yeah, we'll have to deal with those when they come back. But I think that's when I was actually, so this year when I was selecting ewe lambs, one of the things I selected on was daggy bums. So anything that came through, because there was only about 10 of them, they didn't get kept.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
It's
definitely.
probably one of those things we need to work on a bit more. We don't get a lot of fly up here because we're just that bit colder. So we've probably been a bit complacent about it.
Yeah. Okay. Question here in terms of how do you manage to get good conception rates within 3 weeks of tupping? So in other words, how do you keep it to that 90% in that first cycle?
So I think we went to 3 weeks like a long time ago, so probably in 2010 or something. And then we didn't have very good results because we had too many ewes on the place and probably weren't using enough rams. And so then we ended up back out at 30 days. Anyway, we've scrapped that, come back into the 21 days. And we've bought lots of rams actually. And we're just using plenty of rams this year. And I think that has made the difference. Yeah, so the ewes topped at 185%. We had 5% empty, which I'm totally fine with. They were sold 3 days later at 153 pounds through the cull ring. And none of those ewes were in good nick too. They had no excuse not to be in lamb. So yeah, I think I know there's this thing that a ram can tup 100 ewes, and you can definitely do that. But I think if you're being tight like we are, I do think having more rams, because all you need is one not to work. And we do multi-sire, like there's 3 or 4 rams in each group. So
what have you dropped it down to now? Like, is it 1 per 50 or 60 or?
Be about 1 per 50 now, yeah. Depends on the group. I think we put five rams out, or well, it's kind of 4.5 rams. One of them probably, I don't think he's really working, but we have a bit of a soft spot for him. So he's still here. Actually, he's not here. He got sold with the coal ewes the other week. Yeah, so it was about 4 rams to 150 gimmers.
And you know the ones that fall out of that first cycle of those first points, do you note those? Do you notch them? Do they get the bonus notches in the front ear or not? Or they if they don't lamb in that first cycle with you,
Oh no, it's too hard. I mean, I'm not going to be hard on something if it lambs within 21 days. It's
fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a few years ago, anything that was when we ended up being later with a longer lambing was actually because we were on holiday as well. So that always impacts what days we manage to get the tups back in. But I think anything after those kind of 3.5 weeks, we put into a separate lambing group and just didn't keep anything from that. That was, yeah.
Right. Well, I've got one last question. Somebody anonymous attendee that's come in slightly later, so missed the start. And we'll ask you this, and then we'll move on to Janet. So he's asking, a ram with good figures but doesn't look like nothing, will it breed better than a good-looking ram with average figures? So a ram with good figures that looks like a donkey, will it breed better than a good-looking ram that has average figures? So there you go. I should ask Janet that, obviously, but we'll get your view next.
I think it depends on the figure. So we talk about bad figures and we look at the end index, but then it kind of depends, like if you want super, super easy lambing, they probably are going to look a bit average, but that's the kind of the trade-off. Not necessarily, but there's definitely a trade-off there. Or if you want confirmation and it doesn't have a lot of muscle, then that's the trade-off. So I think it's looking at the individual EBVs and not the kind of end, what's it called, the index.
Yeah.
And like a lot of folk are, especially, British sheep people, you've been brought up to like a particular look, depending on what breed you're into, that look varies. So, if you've got to like it, then you've got to like it. But like, I don't
Yeah, I'm not sure what's meant with that, but I assume just an overlook, I would imagine, as opposed to structure, because realistically, structure tends to be structure, doesn't it? So,
yeah. First thing that goes in the bin is the head. Remember that one.
well, let's finish on that note. And hopefully we've answered the questions that have come up anyway. So, Vic, thank you so much. We'll,
Right.
I'm sure
Thanks
that
we
might be coming back to you in a sec anyway. So, but we'll pass over to Janet. Janet, just to talk us through, if you take forward Vic's wise words and put them into how that influences the breeding elements of what we do, I suppose.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dewi, and thanks, Vic. That was great. Just before I put any slides up, I think we've got a couple of questions we were going to ask our audience. So here we are. So this is a chance for you to, I think you can click on your screen and answer these. So first of all, do you condition score your ewes? And do you manage your ewes based on their condition score? So.
We're not allowed to vote, Vic. We're always banned us from doing it, so.
Well, you're voting. I think I'll share my screen. Hopefully that won't stop you voting. Oh. Hopefully that's given everyone a chance to vote. And we'll get some results for that at some stage. I hope, oh, there we are. So we've got 62% regularly condition scoring their ewes, 33% sometimes, and 4% never. So a lot of condition scorers on this call. Do you manage your ewes based on condition score? Again, we've got 44 saying yes, 9% saying no, and 47% being very honest, I suspect, and saying yes, but I could do better. So that's great. That's good to know. Thank you very much. Lots of people using condition scores out there. And I don't want to be on too long, but I just want to talk a little bit more, which fits very much in with what Vic was saying about breeding ewes that thrive in our farming systems. And that's really what Vic's talked about, isn't it? Is breeding a ewe that fits the way her and Jason want to farm and fits in with the lifestyle they want to have, the way they want to farm. And condition scores being a key part of that. And I think condition scores has been something I've been fascinated with for quite a long time. I had a bit of a light bulb moment a few years ago as well, when I was thinking about, how do we improve scanning percentage in sheep when that's a trait that's actually has quite a low heritability. So there's a huge amount of management effect on it. And although genetics is important, it can get drowned out by the management effects. And I routinely drew graphs a bit like this every year, where we looked at the scanning percentage of ewes of different condition scores, and then kind of had this light bulb moment of actually, yes, we can breed sheep that have a higher scanning percentage, but one of the keys to that is probably breeding sheep that get themselves into the optimum condition score that they will scan well. It's not, so it's breeding sheep that will do the job. So what I've got here is some graphs that kind of show the sort of responses we see routinely across our breeding program. And there's, thousands of records have gone into these graphs in our different lines. So, you can see very clearly, we have very few ewes that are down at condition score 2. It typically only be about 2 or 3% in any year, but you get some. And obviously a number of ewes increase as you go up your condition scores here. But we see in all our lines here a very definite response going from 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 in most of our lines, increasing that scanning percentage. And in our Aberfield and Highlander, we're seeing that going on up to the ewes that are 4. So the ewes that can get themselves to that in our management systems are the ones that are going to scan highest. And there are plenty of ewes in there that will do that. We also see in our more prolific breeds, so here we have our Highlander, and over here our Aberdale, which carries the infidel gene, that once you start getting over 3.5 in those prolific breeds, you start getting into those higher numbers of multiples. So those breeds are very suited to those systems where it is difficult to get those condition on those ewes in the autumn. And so you can get a decent lambing percentage out of them at a slightly lower condition score than you will some of the other breeds. But really showing the kind of reward you get for getting that condition on, or having ewes that get the condition on themselves. Interesting, you see with our Cheviot, and we've got less numbers to look at with our Cheviot, but we kind of see that we're getting to an optimum about 3.5, and then it's tending to drop off. I want to see more years' data before I'm convinced that that's a real effect. But it certainly ties in with research work that Nicola Lamb and Anne McLaren have done at SIUC Kirkton with their Blackie flock, where they kind of are saying it's a non-linear response, and once you're getting Blackies up to a condition score of 4, they're losing productivity, and it does look as if that might be the case with the Cheviot as well. So there may be something slightly different going on with those hill breeds that have adapted to that much lower quality, poorer pasture. So, having ewes in optimum condition is that key to that productivity. Having the lambs in there at scanning is obviously a really important point. It's interesting when we look at the Innovis data as well, we can see that it's also making quite a big difference to the ewes that hold to that first cycle. So again, Vic was talking about having a tight lambing, and we all know that that just makes life easier all the way on from there. But we're seeing about an 8% increase for every half body condition score we go up in that probability of holding to that first cycle. So which is quite a big effect. So not only are you getting higher scanning percentage, you're getting a tighter lambing if you've got your ewes in optimum condition, and you're going on to rear more lambs. So we're seeing about a plus 7% for every half body condition score extra. So having ewes in that optimum condition really is that key to productivity, and making sure those ewes are resilient and robust in your systems. And a lot of that is management, but some of it is genetics. So when we look again at our Innovis populations, about 21% of that variation in the ewe's ability to achieve a target body condition score pre-tupping is down to her genetics. So it's something we can very much breed for, and he's very much going to be influenced by genetics. I think that's something that we're very conscious of in all our breeding programs. And you'll know that we very much try to farm our pedigree sheep that are not pedigrees, but breeding sheep under very commercial conditions in large mobs, putting them under those real commercial pressures that we want their daughters to perform in. We generally have in our nucleus flock and our breeding partners, we are quite good at growing grass, but just like everybody, that grass isn't always as good or as much as we would like. The weather gods play their part, and we have to live with that just like any other farmers. So that our ewes are challenged with that. We manage them to try and get to optimum condition pre-topping, but they get the normal challenges in doing that they would on any commercial farm. And so they're really being tested. And we do, in most of our flocks and our maternal flocks, ewes that don't hold their condition or are failing to get to that optimum condition score, generally will be leaving the flock, either through the gates or by going to a terminal sire into a bee flock. So there's quite a lot of selection on that ability of the ewe to get to that target body condition score, and breeding a ewe that is resilient and will fit that system. And we know that that's a kind of vicious or a virtuous circle, not a vicious circle. So again, body condition score being a key there, that ewes that are easier to get to that body condition score take that pressure off growing enough grass pre-topping, and the whole thing just is a virtuous cycle. You then have that grass for other things, you don't have so much pressure, etc. So it just makes life a bit easier. So when we look at kind of genetic trends in condition score, I've pulled out some from the Aberfield here, being our most numerous line, and there's a lot of Aberfield genetics in Vic's flock. We've been driving hard in terms of our overall index, which is kind of overall maternal productivity over the years, and seen some very good improvements, which is this dotted line here. But the thing I guess I'm probably most proud of with this is that increase in lambing percentage. And I'd say my body condition score penny dropped around about 2016, 2017. And you can see since then, lambing percentage has been increasing. The genetic effect on lambing percentage has been increasing quite markedly since then. And when we look at actual condition score, so that's the green line here, that has gone up steadily over that time. We've always had tried to avoid Aberfields getting too big, or all our maternal lines getting too big. And again, those of you that may have heard me speak before will know I've also got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about ewe weight. So I think there's a lot of ewes in this country that are far bigger and heavier than they need to be to produce 2 lambs to 21 kilos. And a 65 kilo ewe in many systems is perfectly capable of doing that. So we have actually in the Aberfield seen a slight decrease in ewe weight over that time as well. So we're getting a smaller ewe that keeps her condition better lambing percentage, and at the same time those carcass traits have been improving as well. So, you know, careful recording, careful attention to the detail can really make those things happen. And at the same time, and we do cull ewes because they don't hold condition, so that's bound to contribute to this, our breeding ewes are lasting longer. And this is the productive life EBV up the side, so we're breeding ewes that last longer. They're more resilient in the system, they're better suited to the system, they're coping with it better, they're lasting better. And again, you know, that's actually quite a significant improvement in the length of time that ewes are lasting, reductions in replacement rate, reductions in cost, better for the environment, all those things, again, virtuous circles. So ewes are easier to get to target body condition, they last longer in the flock. And again, a virtuous circle going on then. So that's really all I've got to add to what Vic has said. You know, body condition score really is a key trait for ensuring ewes are thriving in your system. So I see it as a key trait, both in terms of monitoring how the genetics are working for the system, but also in terms of the genetics. And it's certainly something we use a lot. But it's really important that you're breeding the sheep for the system you want to run, not adapting your system to fit the sheep. And I think body condition score is, again, key to that one. And as Vic has said, one of the keys to doing that is genetics that are tested on farms like yours, selected under pressure, are much more likely to perform in your farm than sheep that are mollycoddled, to put it any other way. So yeah, body condition scores is a bit of a pivotal turnkey trait for me, related to better scanning, shorter lambing times, longer flock life, more lambs sold, healthier, happier ewes, and hopefully healthier, happier farmers. So a short one from me, but if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Janet, would you be able to tell us, to get an EBV, an estimated breeding value for condition score, what does it actually entail in our breeding program? What do we have to do to get that measurement?
So in our breeding program, or in most of our sheep, but certainly all our maternal lines, all ewes will be weighed pre-tupping, and at the same time their body condition scored. And it's that body condition score that is used to get the breeding value. Now, obviously, we have generations of data feeding into that now. So, a ewe's EBV for body condition score will be based on her own body condition score over her lifetime, but also that of all her female relatives as well.
And do we have to repeat that measurement in the year then, or not?
So at the moment, we target that pre-tupping body condition score. A lot of the research work has shown that that's the time of year when it's most heritable. And the way I see it is it's one of the few times of the year when the ewe's not pregnant or lactating. So she's got every chance to get herself into good condition, particularly if we're managing well. But, if she can't get herself into good condition for pre-tupping, it's a pretty poor show. So to me, that's the best time. You're giving her a chance to express her genetic potential, and then you're measuring it. So, but, you can measure it at other times of year, but that one, I think, is the key one.
And then you're adjusting, obviously, for if it's a gimmer, for example, that's reared twins. How is that information overlaid with all of that then? So
we adjust for her age, but we wouldn't adjust for whether she'd reared twins or singles, because, we want a ewe that can rear twins and will bounce back to condition. So that's one of the tests on her.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that, if she's reared twins, she's rewarded for that in her index as well. So she may get away with a poor body condition score, but it's not built into the EBV.
I think Clive was asking a similar question, more or less saying, how do you factor in how hard a ewe has worked in prior seasons, single or twin rearing?
Yeah.
So, you think?
But yeah, and it is, we've debated it long and hard, really, but I do think if, you wean her, you give her a chance to recover between weaning and pre-tupping, and that's her test.
Yeah. And Emma's asked the question, how many weeks prior pre-tupping would you measure for the EBV? Knowing that most people would sort of do a pre-tupping about 6 weeks beforehand. Is that the same?
Yeah, so what in my ideal time, it would be done fairly close to tupping. So maybe when you divide into tupping groups. Because again, that last 6 weeks before tupping, she can be putting on condition, can't she? So, it's the point at which, as close to when she's going to the tup, being practical about when you want to handle her as possible.
And I know Hamish will be doing lots of additional weights and condition scores in the nucleus. So how do they fit in with this then, Janet?
So, yes, and Hamish uses lots of weights and condition scores to manage the ewes, and but equally we intend over time to build up that whole profile over the year into it. And I think one area to look at will be that recovery from weaning to pre-tupping, but building up the data to do that. But again, a lot of the literature would say that the point at which the heritability is lowest is at weaning, because that's when the ewes had everything taken, either had everything taken out of her, or she's been shirking through the season and it's as fat as a pig. It's the genetics is having less of an effect because of the effect of how many lambs she's reared or whatever.
And Janet, how important is weight versus condition score? Do you need both, or if you had to choose, what would you have?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think they're both important. If I had to choose, which would I have? I'm really wary of weight without condition score from a breeding point of view. And we've always, so in all our selection indexes, we actually have a negative weighting against ewe weight. And I've always been really worried that if you do that, you have a danger of selecting skinny ewes, because one condition score can make kind of 8-9 kilos difference to weight. So that's always been adjusted for condition score. So it's something that the Australians, I think, call a standardized ewe weight, where we adjust to a kind of condition score. So we make sure that we're kind of comparing ewe weight, but a standard condition score. So I'm quite worried for breeding using weight without condition score. So I guess if I had to choose one, it would probably be condition score.
So, yeah. And currently, Janet, with our rams that we sell to people like Vic and Jason and those, we don't currently report condition score EBV, but we use it in the breeding program when we're selecting stock sires and stuff.
Yeah. So we don't report condition score EBV. I think there's a limit to how many EBVs you can report without making those catalogues completely indigestible. So I think it's one of those things that we use, and customers can be reassured that we do use it. It's the condition score EBV we've been developing over a number of years and using it in the breeding program. We will bring it into the maternal indexes shortly, so it will be included in the index. But it's, I think our whole principle is we're trying to breed ewes that will hold their condition on commercial grass-based farms that don't have a lot of bought-in feed. And that's what our customers can be reassured of.
And I'm assuming productive life, EBV, in other words, how long a ewe will produce effectively in the flock. Same principle, we've got the EBV, but we're using it within the breeding program. Although we can, in some instances, signpost customers to specific rams, I think.
Yeah, so productive life EBV is a really difficult one because, it's so important, isn't it? But it takes so long to build up the data to get reliable EBVs. Mm-hmm. You've kind of got to go through 2 or 3 generations before you get that maternal information coming through to do it. We are there with all of our lines now, and we do flag up ewes or rams that are particularly good on their productive life EBV. So if it's something people are looking for specifically, they can identify rams doing that. But on, as with condition score, it's a general upward trend in all our lines. So it is something that's improving away in the background.
We've got a question from James here saying, if one is topping ewe lambs, would you select on condition score or weight or both?
The standard advice for ewe lambs is you do it on 65% of mature weight, and that being a minimum. So I guess it would be weight. Anything of poor condition I probably wouldn't put to the top, but primarily it would be on weight.
Yeah. And there's some pretty solid data as well, Janet, isn't there, to show that if you actually grow out your ewe lambs, even if you're not topping them, and you do influence their productivity long term by actually getting those ewe lambs up to that sort of weight in autumn.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of their lifetime productivity.
Yes, yeah. So if you, and if you can do it well, the ewe lambs that lamb are likely to be the most productive ewes in your flock for the whole of their lives. Not everyone does ewe lambs well. And when you get down to quite low conception rates, etc., I think at that point, if you can't lamb that ewe lamb and grow her well through that first season, you have danger of reducing her productive life.
I've got a question there from Fiona asking, with your mature weight, how heritable is it as a trait?
So ewe mature weight is a really quite heritable trait. We're looking at kind of 30-35% heritability. It can be a difficult trait because it's positively correlated to a lot of the other things that we want to improve. In other words, the most prolific ewes, the best carcass, etc., tend to be the heavier ewes, which why over time as an industry we've tended to drift up in terms of ewe weights. But equally, just because it's positively correlated doesn't mean to say there are ewes that are at the lower end of the scale and are equally productive, and we can identify them. And that's what we aim to do with our indexes, with that negative weighting on ewe weight, that we aim to identify those lighter productive ewes, to try and keep the mature weights in the 60 to 65 kilo range.
Janet, to be able to generate an EBV for your mature weight, what data do we actually need to collect for that?
So again, that's based on that pre-tupping weight, but it's also very important that it's done over the whole ewe's lifetime. Again, looking at our ewes, we know that they actually go on growing up till about 4 years. So that's all feeds into that information. And as I say, again, that EBV is adjusted for body condition score so that we're kind of comparing everything at a fair body condition score.
Well, hopefully that's answered the questions, and hopefully, Vic, it shows that there's quite a lot of data capture going on, the heavy lifting to make the right sort of selections for you as a customer, because really you're buying that genetic progress, really, aren't you? If we don't do our job and don't do all this, then we're not really giving you what you need into your farming system.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons we don't record that much stuff is kind of relying on you guys to have done a lot of the recording for us. It's why we just use a set of notching pliers, because we're trusting that your data is good and is right for the system we're trying to do. And Janet and I had a good chat and nerded out on Condition Scholar a while ago, and one of the things she said at the time was that you weren't going to put some of this stuff into the EBV until you were really sure that your data was really good. And that's actually, as a buyer, again, really reassuring that that integrity is there in that numbers process that Janet does in the background, because that's a long way beyond my
and we can
comprehension.
We can quite often get asked that as well, Vic, in terms of people that might be recording through the breed societies or with Signet, for example. They quite often ask, well, what's to show that Innovis's data is actually correct and it's done properly. And other than the fact that all the breeding partners are very good operators, Janet and Kim hold everybody's feet to the fire with data quality scores as well. So when data comes in, every trait that's been recorded is actually scored. So they've got a bit of a competition between them in terms of how well they provide the quality of the data that comes in. And then we've always said that because we're so invested in customers' success or failure, it'll be short-lived, wouldn't it? Any sort of nonsense that we'll be doing on data capture and fudging figures, because it's case studies like yourself where things are changing and improvements are being seen on farm is the thing that's really the telltale sign. And I think that keeps us very honest and always will do. And as an internal element as well, we always make sure that Janet's team the genetics team, have complete autonomy over the data. So irrespective of what the sales team or anybody else want to do, Janet's word goes in terms of what she records and what she reports. And if she ain't happy with it, it's not being reported out there. So now that's been quite an important element through the years, Janet, hasn't it? That QA, if you like, that we have internally to make sure that nothing goes out that we're not comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot on the recording, a lot of what we're kind of monitoring is completeness of recording. What we really don't want is poor sheep we want to know about the poor sheep as well as the good sheep, because that's what drives our breeding program forward. So yeah.
But I think, Vic, your approach of trusting the breeder, choosing the right breeders, and doesn't have to be Innovis. There are plenty of breeders out there that are doing a good job, but choosing the right breeder that it's aligned to your belief and what it's about. And then having Jason and his Buenos Noches, I think, is obviously working very, very well for you in terms of establishing a system and keeping sheep that will look after you so that you don't have to go out there before 6:30, 7 in the morning. And that, yeah, you're muted, but I'm sure I got.
I just say we are a bit short of sheep at the moment. But
yeah, well, that's probably it.
We'll sort that out.
Yeah, and that does happen though, and I think that's an important factor to put in there. If you start putting, these sort of selection pressures on the sheep, inevitably flocks will reduce in the numbers before they build back up again. But hopefully what you end up with is a much more functional flock that does what you need them to do. So, and on that note, I think we pretty much answered the questions that have been put forward to us. And I know Vic hasn't been feeling well for the last few days, so we're not going to hold her here for any other reason. So unless there's any other questions, we're probably going to pull it and draw it to a close. But again, Vic, thank you ever so much. You and Jason are doing a phenomenal job, and it's just nice to see a positive can-do attitude and how you're applying that into your lifestyle and finding that work-life balance, which again is sorely missed, isn't it, with many people? So that approach and that attitude, and it just shines through really in your no-nonsense approach to farming, to life, to the flock. And I think is something we could all sort of pick up from, I think. So
speak to me in July. I'll probably be exhausted.
Indeed, yeah. And Janet, as always, yeah.
Thanks for having me, Dewi. Hopefully, if anyone has any other questions or wants any data, I've got like spreadsheets and spreadsheets of data if they ever want to do any benchmarking. So I'm happy to share that too.
Yeah, that's really grateful. Thank you. And Janet, thank you as always. The solid, down-to-earth, grassroots geneticist that keeps us all straight. So yeah, we wouldn't be doing what we do without her. So, and on that note, we thank you all very much, and go and have a brew. And this recording will be sent to you all. So, and we'll happy lambing. Hope it all goes well to you. Let's keep those storms away, Vic, if we can. So, all right, take care all. Good night.
Bye.
Have a good night.